Come with me. Let's take a journey on our ship of the imagination, not to a distant galaxy, but to our nearest planetary neighbor. We call it Venus. For ages, we have looked up at this brilliant point of light, the brightest object in our sky after the sun and moon. It has inspired poets, guided sailors, and fueled the dreams of storytellers. But Venus is more than just a pretty light. It's a world with a story that is deeply, profoundly intertwined with our own. In many ways, Venus is Earth's twin. It's almost the same size, has a similar mass, and is made of the same rocky stuff. It's our cosmic sibling, born from the same swirling cloud of gas and dust that formed our entire solar system. Imagine a younger Venus, billions of years ago. Our best scientific models suggest a world that would have looked startlingly familiar. It likely had vast oceans of liquid water, much like the early Earth. It had a milder climate with blue skies and white clouds. Picture continents and shorelines, perhaps even the stirrings of primitive life in its warm, sunlit waters. This wasn't a distant, alien world. It was a second Genesis, a second cradle of potential right next door. For a very long time, Venus and Earth may have been on parallel evolutionary tracks, two beautiful blue marbles spinning through the cosmos. This isn't science fiction, it's a plausible scenario based on our understanding of planetary formation and climate modeling. This vision of a once habitable Venus forces us to ask a profound question. If two planets started so similarly, what sent them on such radically different paths? Why did Earth blossom into a vibrant biosphere teeming with life, while Venus became a scorched, toxic wasteland? The answer lies in a story of climate change on a planetary scale, a cautionary tale written in the sulfuric acid clouds of our sister world. Understanding this divergence isn't just an academic exercise. It helps us appreciate the delicate balance that makes life on Earth possible, and reminds us of the fragility of our own world's climate. The story of Venus is, in a very real sense, a story about us. As we look at the data our probes have sent back, we piece together this dramatic history. We see evidence in the planet's atmospheric composition, the deuterium to hydrogen ratio, which strongly suggests the historical presence of massive quantities of water that have since boiled away and been stripped by the solar wind. Venus is like a planetary fossil, preserving the memory of its lost oceans. It stands as a silent testament to the fact that habitability is not a permanent state. Worlds can be born and worlds can die. The journey to understand Venus's past is a journey to understand the cosmic forces that shape the destiny of planets, including our own precious home. So what happened? What transformed our potential twin into a planetary inferno? The culprit was a runaway greenhouse effect, a climate feedback loop gone wild. Think of it like a blanket. On Earth, our atmosphere acts as a thin blanket, trapping just enough of the sun's heat to keep our planet warm and cozy. But on Venus, that blanket became an impossibly thick, suffocating quilt. Being slightly closer to the sun, Venus received more solar energy. As its oceans warmed, more water vapor, a potent greenhouse gas, entered the atmosphere. This trapped more heat, which in turn caused the oceans to evaporate even faster. It was a chain reaction of catastrophic proportions. The scientific data paints a grim picture of the Venus we see today. The surface temperature is a staggering 465 degrees Celsius, about 900 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to melt lead. The atmospheric pressure at the surface is over 90 times that of Earth's, equivalent to the crushing pressure you'd experience nearly a kilometer deep in our oceans. You wouldn't just be incinerated on Venus, you'd be flattened. The air itself is almost entirely carbon dioxide, a toxic and heavy gas, with thick clouds made not of water but of corrosive sulfuric acid. It's the most inhospitable planetary surface in our solar system. This transformation wasn't instantaneous. It likely unfolded over geological time, but in the life of a planet, it was a sudden and violent shift from paradise to hell. The oceans boiled away completely, and the water molecules in the upper atmosphere were broken apart by ultraviolet radiation from the sun. The lighter hydrogen atoms escaped into space, while the heavier oxygen atoms combined with carbon from volcanic eruptions to form the thick blanket of carbon dioxide that smothers the planet today. Venus lost its water forever, and with it, any chance for life as we know it to survive on its surface. It's a stark reminder of how planetary climates can reach a tipping point from which there is no return. The evidence for this past is etched into the very chemistry of Venus's atmosphere. By measuring the ratio of deuterium, a heavier isotope of hydrogen, to normal hydrogen, scientists can infer how much water has been lost over time. Venus has a dramatically higher concentration of deuterium compared to Earth. This is the smoking gun that tells us a vast quantity of lighter, normal hydrogen, once part of water molecules, has vanished into space. Venus is a world that has been desiccated, boiled, and sterilized by its own atmosphere, a tragic monument to the power of the greenhouse effect. There is another deeply strange and unique feature of Venus that hints at a violent past. Every other major planet in our solar system rotates on its axis in the same direction, counterclockwise if you were looking down from above the sun's north pole. But not Venus. It spins backwards in a slow, deliberate motion known as retrograde rotation. A day on Venus, one full rotation, is longer than its year, one full orbit around the sun. The sun on Venus rises in the west and sets in the east. This isn't just a quirky detail, it's a profound cosmic anomaly that demands an explanation. How could a planet end up spinning the wrong way? Planetary systems form from a rotating disk of gas and dust, and the conservation of angular momentum means that everything should spin in the same general direction. To reverse a planet's spin, you need to apply an immense amount of force. One leading scientific hypothesis is that in the chaotic early days of the solar system, Venus suffered a colossal impact. A collision with a protoplanet, a massive body perhaps the size of a small planet itself, could have been so powerful that it literally knocked Venus upside down or reversed its spin. Such an event would have been cataclysmic beyond imagination. The implications of such an impact are staggering. An event powerful enough to alter the planet's fundamental rotation would have undoubtedly reshaped its entire geology and climate. It would have triggered volcanism on a global scale, releasing vast quantities of gases into the atmosphere and potentially kickstarting the very runaway greenhouse effect that sealed its fate. The backward spin might not just be a clue to a past event, it could be the signature of the event that transformed Venus from a habitable world into the inferno we see today. It's a piece of circumstantial evidence that points to a history of sudden planetary scale trauma. This theory aligns with our understanding of the early solar system as a violent, crowded place, a cosmic shooting gallery. We see evidence of giant impacts everywhere. Our own moon was likely formed from such a collision with Earth. Mars has the vast Borealis Basin, a scar from an ancient impact. It's entirely plausible that Venus endured a similar, or even more dramatic fate. Its strange, slow, backward spin is a ghostly reminder of this turbulent past, a silent witness to a catastrophe that forever altered the destiny of Earth's twin. Now let's leave the realm of planetary science for a moment and turn our gaze back to Earth, to the dawn of human civilization. Long before we had telescopes or spacecraft, our ancestors were keen observers of the sky, and no object save the sun and moon captured their attention more than Venus. They saw it as two separate entities, the morning star that heralded the dawn and the evening star that appeared after sunset. They tracked its movements with meticulous care, and across cultures separated by vast oceans and millennia, they associated this brilliant light with powerful deities and visitors from the sky. In ancient Mesopotamia, the Sumerians, one of the earliest known civilizations, worshipped the goddess Inanna, who was personified by Venus. Cuneiform tablets describe Inanna's journey, her descent into the underworld, and her victorious return, a story that mirrors the disappearance and reappearance of Venus from the night sky. The Babylonians, who inherited Sumerian culture, called her Ishtar and created detailed astronomical tables like the Venus tablet of Ammisaduqa to track her movements and predict her appearances. For them, Venus wasn't just a planet, it was a divine being whose actions had a direct impact on life on Earth. This pattern repeats across the globe. In ancient Egypt, the planet was associated with the god Osiris and his consort Isis. For the Maya and Aztecs in Mesoamerica, Venus was of paramount importance. They knew it as Quetzalcoatl or Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, a god who came from the sky to bring knowledge, laws, and civilization to humanity. The Dresden Codex, one of the few surviving Mayan books, contains incredibly accurate almanacs tracking the cycles of Venus, which they used to schedule rituals and even wars. Why did so many distinct cultures independently decide that this specific point of light was a bringer of knowledge from the heavens? It's a fascinating convergence of myth. While one could dismiss it as simple personification of a bright object, the consistency is striking. The theme isn't just about a god of the planet, it's often about a god who came from the direction of the planet or whose story is inextricably linked to it. These ancient records can be viewed as another form of data. They are not scientific in our modern sense, but they are a record of human thought and observation. They tell us that for our ancestors, Venus was not merely an object of study, but a source of profound influence, a celestial entity that actively engaged with the human world. The movements of Venus in our sky are not random. They follow a pattern of stunning mathematical beauty. Because of the specific orbital resonance between Venus and Earth, the path Venus traces in the sky, when viewed from a geocentric perspective over an 8-year period, forms a nearly perfect 5-pointed star or pentagram. Every 8 Earth years, Venus completes 13 orbits around the Sun, returning to almost the exact same spot in our sky. This 8-year cycle is one of the most elegant and predictable phenomena in our solar system. Our ancestors, without computers or advanced optics, knew this. They saw it. This celestial pentagram was not a secret. It was sacred knowledge embedded in myth, symbolism, and architecture. The 5-pointed star is one of the oldest and most widespread symbols in human history. It appears in Sumerian pictograms representing the heavens. It was a symbol of protection for the Babylonians, and it was revered by the Pythagoreans in ancient Greece as a symbol of mathematical perfection and health. Is it a coincidence that this symbol, which so perfectly maps the dance of Venus, is also universally associated with magic, divinity, and hidden knowledge? Perhaps our ancestors were encoding their astronomical observations in their most sacred symbols. This sacred geometry extends beyond simple symbols. The number 5, representing the points of the star, and the number 8, representing the years of the cycle, appear repeatedly in sacred traditions. Think of the 8-spoked Dharma wheel in Buddhism, or the prevalence of octagonal designs in sacred architecture, from baptisteries to mosques. These forms may be echoes of a celestial harmony, an attempt to replicate the perfect rhythm of Venus on Earth. The pentagram itself became a central symbol in many esoteric traditions, from Freemasonry to Rosicrucianism, where it is often called the blazing star, representing the light of reason and enlightenment. So when we see a 5-pointed star, we might be looking at more than just a shape. We might be seeing a diagram of the cosmos, a map of the Venus cycle. When we see sacred numerology based on 5 and 8, we might be hearing an echo of our solar system's orbital mechanics. The Sky was humanity's first book, and the story of Venus was written in a language of geometry and time. Our ancestors read that book and transcribed its lessons into the very foundations of their cultures, leaving us a trail of symbols that points directly to the sky, and specifically to the brilliant morning star. Let's return to our ship of the imagination and look at our corner of the solar system with a wider lens. We see 3 rocky terrestrial planets in a row: Venus, Earth, and Mars. For a planetary scientist, this trio represents a fascinating natural experiment in habitability. They're all in or near the so-called habitable zone, the region around a star where conditions might be just right for liquid water to exist on a planet's surface. They offer us a glimpse into the past, present, and potential future of a world. It's a cosmic story in 3 acts. Act 1 is Venus, the world that was once habitable but lost its chance. It stands as a powerful example of a paradise lost, a planet that succumbed to a runaway greenhouse effect. Its story is a cautionary tale of how a world on the inner, hotter edge of the habitable zone can be pushed over the brink. Act 2 is Earth, the Goldilocks planet, where everything went just right. Our world found itself at the perfect distance from the sun, with the right size and composition to maintain a stable climate and liquid water for billions of years, allowing complex life to evolve. Earth is the vibrant, living present. Act 3 is Mars, the world that might have been. Mars is smaller and further from the sun. Evidence strongly suggests that, like Venus, it also had a thicker atmosphere and liquid water in its distant past. We see dried-up riverbeds, deltas, and lake beds carved into its surface. But because of its smaller size, its internal geologic engine cooled down, its magnetic field vanished, and the solar wind stripped away most of its atmosphere. Mars is a world on the cold outer edge of the habitable zone that froze and dried out. It represents a potential future, a world that lost its vitality. This progression, Venus, Earth, Mars, presents an intriguing narrative. It's a sequence of planetary evolution. If a technologically advanced civilization arose on Venus, facing an impending climate catastrophe that would render their world uninhabitable, where would they look? They would look outward, along this corridor of habitability. The next logical step, the nearest and most promising haven, would be Earth. This isn't proof of migration, but it establishes a clear and logical pathway. The Venusian migration theory rests on this fundamental premise: the existence of a clear, viable, and proximate destination for a civilization trying to escape a dying world. Let's come back to Earth and look at some of its most profound mysteries. All around the world, we find ancient structures built with a scale and precision that defy easy explanation. Places like Baalbek in Lebanon, with its trilithon stones weighing over 800 tons each, or Sacsayhuaman in Peru, with its massive polygonal stone walls fitted together without mortar so perfectly that you can't slip a piece of paper between them. Mainstream archaeology tells us these were built with simple tools and brute force, but the sheer engineering feat continues to baffle us. Could there be another explanation? What if the knowledge to build these cyclopean structures was not developed independently, but was a legacy? A kind of technological inheritance? The Venusian migration theory proposes that these sites could be monuments built with advanced knowledge, perhaps left by visitors or survivors from a more advanced civilization. This isn't to discredit the ingenuity of our ancestors, but to suggest they may have had help. The common features of these sites, the use of megalithic stones, incredible precision, and sophisticated astronomical alignments, point to a shared global tradition of construction that seems out of place for its time. Many of these ancient wonders exhibit clear astronomical alignments, not just to the sun and moon, but specifically to Venus. The governor's palace at Uxmal in the Yucatan, for example, is a masterpiece of Mayan architecture. Its central doorway is not aligned with the cardinal directions, but is skewed to face the southernmost rising point of Venus. This alignment is incredibly precise and demonstrates the profound importance the Maya placed on the planet. They were not just observing Venus, they were orienting their most sacred and powerful structures toward it, encoding its celestial path into the very ground they walked on. This pattern is not isolated to the Maya. From the temples of Egypt to the stone circles of Europe, we find structures that seem to function as complex astronomical observatories with sightlines that track the rising and setting of Venus at key points in its 8-year cycle. These sites could be more than just calendars. They could be markers, signposts, or even sanctuaries dedicated to the celestial bringers of knowledge. The architecture itself becomes a form of text, a story written in stone and aligned with the stars, telling of a deep and ancient connection to the planet Venus. Across countless cultures, the myths don't just associate Venus with a deity, they describe that deity as a culture hero, a being who descends from the sky to give humanity the tools of civilization. This is a recurring theme so powerful and specific that it begs for a closer look. These are not creator gods who form the world from nothingness. They are teachers, instructors, and guides who arrive to elevate a primitive humanity. They bring knowledge of agriculture, astronomy, law, writing, and architecture. They are, in essence, light bringers. Consider Quetzalcoatl of the Mesoamerican traditions. The legends are clear. He was a light-skinned, bearded figure who arrived from the east, from over the sea. He taught the people how to plant corn, how to read the stars, how to build cities, and how to live by a code of laws. He decried human sacrifice and ushered in a golden age. His symbol was the feathered serpent, a union of the earth, the serpent, and the sky, the feathers. And his celestial counterpart was the planet Venus. When his work was done, he was said to have departed, sailing back to the east on a raft of snakes, promising one day to return. We see a similar figure in the Sumerian Oannes, or the Akkadian Adapa. The Babylonian historian Berossus described Oannes as a being who emerged from the sea. He had the body of a fish, but the head and feet of a man beneath the fish head. During the day, he would come ashore to teach humanity writing, science, and the principles of building cities and temples. At night, he would return to the sea. In Egypt, we have Thoth, the ibis-headed god of wisdom, writing, and magic, who was seen as the divine scribe who brought knowledge to gods and men. These are not just gods, they are civilizing agents. The consistency of this bringer of knowledge myth is a compelling piece of the puzzle. If a group of advanced survivors from a dying Venusian world arrived on Earth, how would a primitive humanity perceive them? They would not see them as fellow beings, but as gods. Their spacecraft might be described as fiery chariots or serpents. Their advanced technology, agriculture, engineering, astronomy, would seem like divine magic. The stories of Quetzalcoatl, Owans, and Thoth could be the fragmented, mythologized memories of a real historical event. First contact with a technologically superior culture that guided our own civilization's first steps. We have traveled far, from the hellish surface of Venus to the sacred temples of ancient Earth. Now let's bring all these threads together. On one hand, we have hard science. We know Venus is Earth's twin. We have strong evidence that it once had oceans and was potentially habitable. We know it suffered a catastrophic runaway greenhouse effect, and that its bizarre retrograde rotation points to a violent event in its past. Planetary science gives us a clear motive and a timeline. A world was dying. On another hand, we have the records of our ancestors. All over the world, we find myths of sky gods, bringers of civilization, whose stories are deeply connected to the planet Venus. We have ancient astronomical texts, like the Dresden Codex and the Venus Tablet of Amisaduqa, showing a sophisticated understanding of the planet's cycles. We have a sacred, five-pointed symbol, the pentagram, that perfectly maps the 8-year dance of Venus and Earth, embedded in cultures across the globe. History and mythology provide a consistent narrative of influence from the sky, pointing specifically to Venus. Finally, we have mysteries on the ground. We have megalithic structures like Sacsayhuaman and Baalbek, built with a precision and scale that challenge conventional explanations. We find that many of these sites are not just tombs or forts, but are aligned with stunning accuracy to celestial events, particularly the cycles of Venus. And we find esoteric traditions like Freemasonry that have preserved the symbolism of Venus as the blazing star, a source of enlightenment for centuries. These architectural and cultural artifacts provide physical evidence of a lost high knowledge. The Venusian migration theory is not a single provable fact. It is a coherent narrative that connects these disparate fields: planetary science, mythology, archaeology, and symbolism. It suggests that these are not all separate, unrelated phenomena. Instead, they may be different facets of one incredible story. A story of a dying planet, a desperate journey, and a civilizational legacy left to an infant humanity, a legacy that echoes down to us today. It transforms Venus from a tragic, dead world into a key player in our own origin story, and reminds us that the truth of our past may be grander and more cosmic than we have ever dared to imagine.